Hello, and welcome to Women We Watch in Tourism podcast series. WWW is a platform where we provide a space for women to leverage collective wisdom, experiences, and inspiration from women powerhouses in our industry to become innovative game changers. We will be engaging in insightful conversations with women who have changed the face of businesses in our industry and trailblazers who have steered innovative and creative ideas. This is a must-listen podcast for women leaders, professionals, and entrepreneurs to become visible, break glass ceilings, and to grow their impact. We believe that sharing these insights will be a catalyst for women in our industry to unleash their potentials and to seize the crisis as a turning point. So join our conversations by subscribing to Women We Watch in Tourism podcast. Research has indicated that fewer than 18% of leaders have the qualities of mind to optimally lead in a VUCA environment like the current pandemic. Of the many pressing demands on leaders, transforming their companies and destinations to adopt a new bionic operating model may be the most urgent and will require them to lead in new transformative ways. The COVID-19 pandemic seems only to have accelerated the need for the transformation of people, businesses, and economies to survive and thrive in the volatile ecosystem. In our episode 6, we engage in a highly insightful conversation with a leader who is passionate about and committed to transformative leadership and agile leadership style and service excellence in creating bespoke service experiences. Neeta Lachmandas. Neeta is the Executive Director at Institute of Service Excellence, Singapore. She leads the Institute in driving forward its mission to help businesses in Singapore in their digital service transformation efforts, raising service levels, and building consumer experience strategies. Prior to her current appointment, Neeta was Assistant Chief Executive Business Development Group at the Singapore Tourism Board. In that role, she helmed the board's efforts in strengthening Singapore's position as a premier MICE and business destination, increasing Singapore's share of the medical tourism and private education sector, as well as the group's industry. Neeta's 8 years at STB also saw her lead in a wide range of areas from manpower and labor policies to technology development and service excellence. Neeta has more than 20 years of a working experience in the areas of marketing, communications, account management, and business development. So listeners, let's dive in and listen in to Neeta Lachmandas. Good morning, Neeta. It gives
Hello, Neeta. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Neeta. And it's after such a long time. I've been wanting to have you here on our podcast, and it gives me immense pleasure to have you today and to do this conversation with you and hear your insights. So welcome to Women We Watch in Tourism podcast series.
Thank you. And I mean, kudos to you for starting this whole podcast, starting the little bit of shards of a movement, hopefully, something that becomes an incredibly big movement here in this part of the world, to bring more women into what is such an amazing and exciting industry. I have to say, though, that just to qualify, I was in the tourism industry. I still work with the tourism industry players, I suppose, as you would call it, but currently I'm not necessarily what you would say in the tourism industry per se. So I work with a lot of other industries as well, and I think actually that gives me a very, very interesting perspective as to how the tourism industry is responding and what the tourism industry is and isn't doing, not only now, in the past, perhaps in the future. against the other industries that I work pretty closely with as well.
Yeah.
So
and it is your, I guess, your broad-based experience and exposure that we really want to tap on, because I think it has been highly instrumental towards, tourism development in Singapore, but also in the way that we have steered service excellence. So I'm going to dive in straight into one very important question in terms of leadership that helped steer Singapore's tourism industry. So prior to the pandemic, Singapore has scaled the charts to become one of the world's top most visited city, right? MasterCard Index had ranked us that way. And we were voted as the top MICE destination in the world. Sea Event, for example, mentioned that as well. So being a competitive destination requires a very conscious strategy, a strong and effective leadership that recognizes the importance of long-term visioning, a clear sense of priority, and a unified approach to bring all the various stakeholders together. And that's not easy, And since you joined Singapore Tourism Board in 2008, you have taken several leadership roles in strengthening Singapore's position as a premier business MICE destination, as well as medical tourism, and also growing the cruise industry. That's a lot of work that you have done, Neeta. Yeah. So can you share with us on your insights on the kind of leadership that Singapore has adopted to thrive the many challenges and stiff competition, and also in observing the current pandemic, how do you think leadership can change?
Yeah. So Nisha, let me qualify. I'm not in the tourism industry, neither am I in the tourism board, and I have not been for the last, coming to 6 years now.
Okay.
So I can't speak for what the leadership is like now, but I can speak to my experience having been in the tourism board, done several things, many of them in leadership positions, and obviously observing what I see and how Singapore is approaching the entire pandemic as well, right? So I will say one of the strengths and one of the reasons that we were always a very leading MICE destination is because Singapore has always been a foreplanner. And we talk about transformational leadership, and we talk about having a vision and all that. And in a way, I think that this is something that the folks in the Singapore government have been very good about. Having a vision. And then working very systematically towards the vision. When I led the MICE team, and this was in 2015, we were already talking about what we thought MICE was going to be like and where we were moving in the future. And we had what we call the 2020 MICE plan. So, we always worked ahead. And when I look at that plan, and it was so, sometimes I think, wow, that's quite prescient, because we were talking about digital experiences and the importance of building that kind of infrastructure. We were talking about experience design, because, we knew that at the end of the day, it was going to focus on the motivation to want to come for an event, and that would really be focused on experience design.
Absolutely.
And we were focused on really skills development, and how do we build the skills? What are the skills we need to build? So I think that has been perhaps a very important signature, hallmark, I guess, of how we approached MICE. And we've always looked in. For example, we knew that we need to build Singapore as the way you have Geneva, you have whatever. We needed to build Singapore as a hub for associations to thrive, because they are the ones that are then going to generate the meetings.
So what you're saying is, the visioning and, the forward thinking has been Singapore's DNA, isn't it? And that's what really, really steered us towards where we have arrived, where we arrived just prior to the pandemic, But if you look at the pandemic, right, I mean, it's a VUCA world at the moment, right? And many leaders and researchers have said that, fewer than 18% of the leaders today have the qualities to optimally lead in this VUCA environment that is what we're experiencing at the moment. And one of the pressing demands of leaders is to be transformational or to transformative, and to transform their destination and adopt a new, what we call a bionic operating model, right? And so therefore, you have often talked about transformation. I followed a lot of your interviews and your writing, and you have talked a lot about transformation of people, businesses, and an economy as a whole in a volatile ecosystem. And you talked about a strong culture as a core to transformation. So share with me, what can leaders and policy makers of whether it's tourism organization or any related industry do to transform their business models? And what is the best tip that you can give to tourism businesses or any business to transform in the current business landscape?
Well, I mean, firstly, I know that a lot of the tour, and my heart bleeds for the tourism businesses that are suffering or have suffered so badly.
Certainly, yeah.
But my sense is, if we look when we look back 10 years from now, we will realize that this was really a watershed opportunity to transform, because the threat is so existential that if you don't transform, you die.
That's
right.
Correct.
And there is never been any, not in my lifetime anyway, a greater impetus to transform than what the tourism industry is seeing with COVID now. And hence, I look at what I'm seeing today vis-a-vis what I was seeing, say, 18 months ago. And I am much, much more optimistic about the ability of the tourism industry and tourism businesses to survive and to thrive. Because the pace of transformation, I think, has picked up tremendously. So in a way, circumstances forced them to transform.
Right. Okay.
And even though these were things that we have been talking about for a very, very long time, even when I was at the tourism board, we talked about digital transformation, the need to look at creating experiences in a different way, the fact that, Gen Z was going to be different, they were consuming differently. And most importantly, the fact that, tourists come to countries that display authenticity, they come to places where the locals go to, Yet, we never really focused on domestic tourism. This pandemic has forced us to focus on domestic tourism. So I believe in retrospect, we will see that we have changed in a way that will only make us stronger in the future. But it did take a very, very big threat to our own being for that to happen. So I guess the question is, how will the tourism industry transform such that they, cycles of, we call it discontinuity. Cycles of discontinuity are going to happen all the time. Question is, how will we as a tourism industry be more prepared in the future? And of course, that is going to depend very, very much on what we call transformational leadership, right?
Right.
As opposed to transactional leadership. So a couple of things that I saw in the tourism industry, which I think are going to have to change. And a lot of them are culture-based, and perhaps they are already changing, is firstly, and a lot of this is actually focused around mindset shifts. So the leaders are going to have a mindset shift. The leaders are going to have to think of their industry and their businesses from a much more agile kind of mindset, as opposed to what has been happening now. I had a very, very interesting conversation with a hotelier just a few weeks ago on how steep the learning curve was for their hotel, because hitherto they had always ignored F&B. F&B was seen as an addendum to their main revenue generating business, which was obviously rooms, right?
Right.
And so when the pandemic hit, and as it turned out, F&B had to become much more important. They were completely unprepared for it, from a leadership perspective, from a processes perspective, and definitely from a culture perspective. So the learning became much more steep, because they were not prepared. They operated as silos. There was a bit of a hierarchy, as I suspect there is in many hotels, that F&B is basically there just to support the guests that are staying in the
Absolutely,
hotel.
yeah.
So that was a great example of how this idea of agility needs to be very much at the forefront of
certainly.
Right? But not only that, it's about this idea of how transformational leadership to me, and I'm not a huge fan of labels. We call it transactional leadership, transformational leadership, servant leadership. We have all these labels, and after a while we all get confused. Because, good leaders have a little bit of kind of everything. But I think there are a few mindsets that are going to be really, really important going forward. The first one will be the idea of a partnership mindset, the mindset for collaboration, and moving away from this very hierarchical idea of running an organization, right? So who's to say that anybody has got a monopoly of great ideas, So how to build this sense of collaboration, not only within your organization, but even within the community. So, we are still very much, in the work that I do currently at the Institute of Service Excellence, we very much champion the idea of having a community mindset, the term cooperation, right? That you need to cooperate. You can still compete, but you need to cooperate, because the more information that you share, it doesn't have to be proprietary financial information, but the more information that we can share, the stronger all of us. A rising tide can lift all boats, And I find that in the tourism industry, it is still a very, very, I'm scared of this person is my competitor, I will absolutely not share any information with anybody type of mentality.
That's right.
And I think that is one mentality that perhaps needs to change. More businesses need to come together and find common ground to work together. So that's number one. The other mindset that I think is going to be very, very important is, I suppose, what I call the discovery mindset. So
the art of possibilities, isn't it?
Correct, absolutely. You get so caught up in your day-to-day that you don't realize that the world outside you is actually moving on, and perhaps moving ahead, and I've seen this in the course of my over 25-year career now. I've seen this happening in so many businesses, where they are so busy looking at what their competitor next door is doing that they don't realize that they're being disrupted completely outside of the industry. Something has come in. So, then it becomes hard to respond if you're not keeping, if you don't have teams that are really looking outside, all the time. So being very, very externally focused. It was interesting. I read just an article a couple of days ago. Arthur Keong, he was saying that when COVID hit, he created two teams. One was the everyday operating team, and then one was the reimagining team. Because it's time to reimagine. Not many businesses have the luxury to be able to do that, and I recognize that it's a struggle. But again, I think it's also can be very, very it can become an existential threat. Let me give you an example. This is outside of the tourism industry, but I was talking to one of the big printing companies in Singapore, and I mean, credit to them. They were at an event to really think about how to look at things kind of differently, but because they realized that they were being disrupted by Amazon cloud, so they never even thought to look at this disruptor, because suddenly people were not people could print just one, people could self-print, just print one copy, the trend against this whole idea of conscious consumption, do we need to print, everything coming online. The trend moves so fast that every year they would say, okay, this is happening, but we're okay, we can survive. But one day you get disrupted from somebody you're not even looking at.
Absolutely.
That is what happens, and that can be really, really scary.
And it's interesting what you're saying, Neeta, because I've been an advocate, of our industry learning from other industries rather than competing within our tourism industry or competing with other tourism destinations. But there is so much that we can learn from the disruption that have taken place in the banking sector, for example, and the way that they have adopted not only technology, but the possibilities of how banking could evolve to something so dramatically different from what it used to be, So we have so much to learn from other industries. We can only look outside the box and look at the disruption that have taken place in other sectors and bring it into our industry. I think that would be so amazing. And you are so absolutely right when you said that what is then it's so fundamental or is an imperative at the moment is agility, right? And I think nothing more is important in the age of disruption compared to what agility can do for our organization, right? And so tell me a little bit about, what can leaders or policymakers today do to be more agile and not just to survive, but to thrive as we emerge out of the crisis?
Well, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, this is my perspective.
Sure.
And listen, when we talk about transformational leadership, and we say that transformational leadership is about being able to provide a vision, which I think is all well and good and very important. But honestly, if you look at the tourism industry today, what vision can you provide? Everything is so fluid. I challenge
absolutely.
Any
what a brilliant word, like fluidity. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, what are they able to predict what the state of their tourism business is going to be a year from today? As in, do they know the tourists are coming back, the borders are, they don't, So for me, this whole idea of agility is very much tied in with having a very, very maybe entrepreneurship startup kind of mentality. So,
Right.
even though you are huge or you're big, and I know it's hard when you're big, you have legacy systems, you have a lot of staff, right? But the idea for agility to me is that you need to have a culture where it's a culture of experimentation.
Absolutely.
And
Beautiful word.
Experimentation is not only tolerated, experimentation is supported and
fostered.
And fostered. So I suppose one of the things that's really important is to build agility in the organization. You still need to have a vision, of course. A leader needs to have a vision, but the vision is going to be less and less, to my mind, about the numbers and the whatever, but more about the why, the sense of purpose. I think is very
absolutely. I think that's what an imperative of transformative leadership is. Correct. About turning that purpose into action. But first of all, we need to know the why and the purpose, right? So, and you're so right in the sense that, yes, I think we need visions, but today in such a fluid world, it's very difficult to say, yeah, this is what we want to strive towards, because it's quite impossible today to do that, isn't it? Without being agile and innovation coming into place. And I love what you said about the entrepreneurial spirit has to be there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and again, when we talk about entrepreneurial spirit, I don't mean that, everybody just, kind of, does everybody's bootstrapping, I mean, like, there are certain there's a certain culture that's very, very important. The culture of experimentation, the culture of continuous learning.
All right.
The idea that an organization is not inanimate; it's living and breathing.
Yes.
And it needs to be then forward looking all the time. This idea that it's not about just if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's about the fact that at some point, we are going to have to change as everybody else around us changes. And of course, the other thing for me about an agile, very, very important, which I think is becoming very, very topical now in an agile organization, is this idea of inclusivity. Because organizational structures are becoming more and more again, less clear. You have much more diverse, multi-generational, different sexual orientations, and you as a leader need to bring all these people together to find a common why.
That's right.
So as a leader, I think you are going to have to, if you want your organizational to be agile, then you need to make sure that these things, don't hold you back eventually, right. And you're all moving towards a common goal. And I think one of the problems that a lot of organizations still have is the leader is seen as somebody who is kind of detached from the rest of the organization. They're sitting in their ivory towers, and they don't practice the kind of humility which we talk about in servant leadership, right? That they need to have.
Right.
So I think those are. They're not like, I can't tell you, well, in order to be an agile organization, do these 5 things, because it doesn't work that way. But if you want to build an agile organization, then you need to build a culture of agility in the organization, the culture that, you can move fast. And this culture is based on this idea of everybody's, everybody's learning all the time. We foster experimentation. You know, you could be gay, straight, whatever. I don't care. You know, we are working towards a common goal. And I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be very, very important. And of course, the leadership team needs to sponsor transformation. I mean,
Neeta, I want to pick up on that one point that you mentioned about inclusivity, because, you know, a UNWTO report indicated that only 23% of the world's tourism ministers are women, right? Yeah. And very few policymakers are women. And although our industry is made up of 60 to 70% women being in the labor force, you find that the percentage of women who is going up onto the hierarchies of the middle management at top management drops to about 16 to 23%, depending on which country we are talking about. So there is a dropout in the middle, you know, and there are many, many reasons why these happen, right? And I want to ask you from your own personal experience. You have risen to the ranks of becoming the Assistant Chief Director while at Singapore Tourism Board, now the Executive Director at the organization that you're working. What challenges did you face as a female professional and leader to break the glass ceiling? And also, what advice would you give to women who aspire to break these boundaries to become more visible at higher management?
You know, there's some interesting data out there. I forget the source, but you know, it shows that if you look at college level and then you look at kind of like university levels, you know, women are very well represented. You know, and then it kind of starts to drop out after that, right? So it's not a matter of intelligence, definitely.
No.
Not, you know, and if I'm being the feminist that I am, I very often jokingly, of course, say that, you know, women, actually, you know, women, I think, have the potential to be excellent leaders because women also bring a perspective of compassion and much more empathy.
And many of the leadership qualities that we have found in the COVID-19 situation requires in leaders, right, are the traits that women are very innately in us, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So then that begs the question as to why, right? So for example, if you look at the hospitality industry and you think of a general manager, you know, there are very, very few women general managers, even up to today, you know, and then, you know, you go higher, you go into the policy makers, and then, you know, you go into the people that actually run government agencies, ministries, whatever you were talking about, tourism ministers. I mean, this is my personal view, and you know, look at COVID, and when everybody was forced to work from home, children included. You know, I was having a lunch with some of my female employees who used to work for me when we were at the tourism board. And I would say that pretty much all of them said that, you know, the primary responsibility of making sure that the children were online in their online classes, were not, you know, playing of the fool, their meals were attended to, fell to the mothers, even though they had full-time jobs and were working.
Absolutely, it's called the unpaid care, isn't it? Yeah.
Correct. So I mean, you know, whether we like it or not, that is our reality. So, you know, for us as women to actually rise to the top of these organizations, not only do we need to have the smarts and the skills, but we have got other things that we have to overcome as well. You know, and I think whether we like it or not, that's the reality of our lived experience these days, right? So, you know, I have done extremely well, but and by any account, I have what you would say is a very supportive husband.
Right.
But even I had to give up opportunities because the expectation was that, we're not going to cross halfway around the world for your career. Because what happens to my career? There are some real realities that we have all been conditioned to live.
So what was your one biggest challenge that you faced as you rose up to the ranks?
My biggest challenge I think I faced was this inordinate sense of guilt.
Right.
As I was rising up the ranks, if I'm going to be really, really honest,
that's so real, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I realized that, especially when you're a mother, there are society does place expectations on you. And after a while, you start to place those expectations on yourself, and I realized that, so I was traveling, and when you're traveling so much as you need to, if you're in a tourism career,
certainly,
then I started feeling a little bit that sense of okay, am I around enough for my child? And I think these are very, very real issues.
That's right.
Everyone who is a mother has. I don't know that society expects fathers to carry that same type of guilt, because I don't see it as something that is as commonplace for a man, So it was this idea, and I think what really does become difficult for women is they are then juggling their work life, and they are carrying more and more responsibility because they're going up the ladder, right? They're going up the ranks.
Right.
But they still have a huge responsibility for the family, the home, the children, and they then decide to sacrifice themselves.
Right.
So it's like, okay, my life is about my work and my family, and then the me becomes the necessary sacrifice.
It's a very nice word, an interesting word you use, self-sabotage, or in literature they talk about it as self-select. You intentionally self-select out of the career ladder or at the decision-making table. So I want to ask you, did you arrive at a point in your life where you felt an intention to say, no, I will not self-select myself out of this. I want to be intentionally visible because I have the skills, I have the competency, or I have the ability to make a difference and a change. Have you ever gone through such crossroads?
I think I'm in a very, very fortunate position, because even as I say all these things, the reality is that I have an environment with my husband who is incredibly supportive of my career, so everything is a factor of scale, right? It's not a 0 or 100% game. It's not like there's no support or there's 100% support. It all varies. And it's about finding the right balance and having the right agreements and discussions in your house that allows you to say that, yes, my career is as important as anybody else's. And these are the set of conditions that I need for my career to thrive as well, And I think, I do think it's changing. I do think that you are going to see more and more women climb up the ranks because the mindsets will have to change, and hopefully we see more and more women speaking up, playing a role, being honest enough to talk about the issues that that they have faced, and hopefully we can create this support network for women. So I think one of the proud things for me, and one of my employees actually told me this, was that I gave them I let them feel that they could put their family as much at the forefront at work because I model.
Brilliant. Yeah.
You know, yeah. So, for me, it was not about working late nights, working whatever, it was for myself. Because of the challenges that I was facing, and the guilt that I was facing myself, I did make it a point to say, I'm going to be home. I leave at this time. I'm going to be home because I want to spend time with my daughter at least for X amount of time, before. And I realized that I put in place those things for myself, but in a way, I also gave the female members of my team a role model to say that, I'm not expected to work until midnight, 10 o'clock every night and put work at the forefront of everything because I have a family as well and I need to juggle the two, and that is my reality.
Right. I mean, it's very interesting that you use the word role model, Neeta. I think, as you see something is trending on LinkedIn at the moment where people are sharing that this little girl is me and what made me grow. I mean, it's quite interesting. And they were saying that 70% of the girls today require a role model, and I think that the strong person who has got a sense of direction and commitment and conviction that you have at the moment and you're demonstrating, that becomes a very important reflection of what women would aspire to be, and you have been a role model to many people in the industry. I was, also for people who are now currently in your organization. So, this podcast, right, what we call Women We Watch, we want to share the lived experience and narratives of women like yourself who are sources of inspiration and role models. So share with us, who is this one woman that you watch, or qualities that you look up to?
I honestly, I don't have a single woman that I think is like wow, has done everything. I think that it's a bit too complex for me for that. But I think it is these qualities of courage, perseverance, and immense optimism about the future.
Right.
That I think are the qualities that I hope I role model, certainly for my daughter. So if I look at my mother, my mother was made a widow when she was in her early 50s. My father passed away and she had 5 children. My mother was 6 children, 5 daughters.
Oh, wow.
Born in an Indian, Sindhi family where having daughters means you are paying your life.
Culture, right? Yeah, absolutely.
My mother and father had a wonderful marriage. I don't think they went anywhere without one another. They were each other's rock, and suddenly she was alone, and she had to raise all these children who were daughters, and the immense amount of courage. I mean, the reality is
absolutely.
We all went to university. We all became professionals. At that point,
amazing.
Happened. I don't know how she would have carried on without a sense.
She was your bedrock, isn't it?
I mean, she is somebody that I would say had immense grit, immense courage, and immense perseverance. Because again, life. It's like COVID, right? Life just deals you a set of cards, and how you respond is really the mantle of what you are. I look at these young ladies. I think a couple of them were Indian in the US, and they set up the society Women Who Code.
Right.
And I had so much, I was watching a documentary on a couple of them, and they're young, they're much younger than me, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. You see something which is a man's world, and you say, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to let it define that coding is a man's world. I'm going to build something, and I'm going to teach women that they can start coding as well, because these are all artificial constructs that we have created.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
Stereotypes that we kind of
you break. Yeah,
and we grow up with stereotypes, so we believe the stereotypes. And I think if we really want women to succeed, because definitely women have the intelligence, they have the temperament, then we need to break the stereotypes.
Right. So as much as you watched the documentary and got inspired, my hope, Neeta, is for the listeners who are in this podcast listening in, that I'm so sure that they are going to be inspired by what you have just shared today.
I hope so too.
And that's the reason why we have you here.
Yeah, we need more women in the business, whether it's tourism or honestly anywhere else. But we do need more women to sit on boards.
Certainly.
More women to lead organizations, because there is an innate we are built with the maternal gene, right? There is an innate there is something in us that I think would be extremely valuable for
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And if you would like, from our conversation today, one takeaway that you would like to leave listeners to think about, what would that be?
I think the most important thing is that whether we like it or not, we are going to have to deal with change, and how we deal with change is the most important. I love this quote from Charles Darwin. If you don't mind, I'd like to
sure, please. Yeah.
It's not the fittest nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the most adaptable to change.
Oh my, wow, beautiful.
And I think that COVID is exactly teaching us that
Absolutely.
we are going to have to transform, whether we like it or not. And the ones that are going to succeed are the ones that practice adaptability. That's number one. Number two, which we didn't talk about at all, but which is very, very close up to my heart, and which is why I studied law, but my entire career journey has always been about understanding people and understanding motivation, right? And which is why customer experience design is so important to me. So experience design, to me, that's going to be the real. It's how businesses that are going to survive and thrive are businesses that are going to be relevant to their consumers. And in order to be relevant to your consumers, you have to understand them. You need to know what moves them. You need to create an experience that it's really going to be about the experience, because I think goods and services can easily become more and more commoditized.
Definitely.
Right? It's really going to be about the experience.
Definitely.
And more, I think the experience is going to be, not only was it a good experience, but was it a transformational experience? So to me, in the MICE industry, that is, when we talk about experience design, I do think that we need to think about what is experience design? I can have a great experience, or is it going to be a transformational experience, which then warrants me, taking the flight back when I don't need to, because all these events are now hybrid. So that to me is a place that is very, very close to me.
I think that is the crux of, I think, what the businesses need to know at the moment when they move forward whether it's tourism, whether it's banking, whether it's healthcare, at the core of it all is the customer's experience, and I think everyone is trying to grapple with that, like with the new normal, so-called, what would the customer be seeking? What sort of immersive experiences would they want, and I think it's anybody's guess at the moment, but we are all trying to put that at the core. And I think you are so passionate, and that's why you are where you are. And I'm so sure that you're going to be shaping Singapore's experiences that we are going to be rendering to the world, and we all are watching this space where you are going to make transformation and changes. So thank you so much, Neeta, for I think that part of the customer experience deserves a completely different conversation. And I would think that deserves another stage where we should.
That's a very, very long conversation.
Absolutely.
Actually, yes.
And a very important one at it, and if, let's say, anyone listening in really wants to connect with you, find out a little bit more about what you do, and where can they reach you, Neeta?
My handle is Neeta Lachmandas, NeetaLachmandas on LinkedIn. You can ping me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
All right, we will put that on the show notes as well. And Neeta, it's with reluctance that I end this conversation, but I like I said, I would really want to further this into another one, and I think viewers can look forward to another conversation. But thank you so much for taking yourself out from your busy schedule, gracing your presence here, and I'm so sure, as far as I got goosebumps listening to you and getting inspired, there are many viewers, listeners who are also going to be so inspired listening into you today. So I wish you the very, very, very best, Neeta, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
Dear listeners, I can't describe what a privilege it has been having Neeta on our show, and I've enjoyed this very empowering conversation with her. Thanks for listening in to our final episode 6 in season 1. If you like this episode or would like to share your views, please connect with us on womenwewatchtourism@gmail.com. If you know of anyone who may benefit listening into our conversations, please share our episodes with them. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Insta, as well as subscribe to us on all major podcast platforms. Join us in season 2, where we unveil a more exciting format and conversations with empowered and empowering women. This is Till Then Nisha signing off with my co-host Zeno and our amazing help Nadia. Stay empowered and inspired. Goodbye.